data and I'm going to hoard it and I'm going to just give Andy a little piece, but he has to give it right back to me. And if it's corrupted, or somebody breaks that time frame, or somebody puts some sort of error in, immediately your system is broken. And it takes a long time. I mean, you're waiting for individuals or individual companies or entities to actually change this stuff. Even if they have business logic, still it's a one-to-one-to-one. This, we're talking about everybody gets the same copy of the ledger, and everybody has all of that same information, and they're all validating it at the same times, or appropriately about the same times after it's dispersed down, to make sure that this stuff is accurate. And then, if I see you're whacked out and you've got some crazy stuff going on in your ledger, the rest of us in this whole room can say, man, you're whacked out. Then we can help you fix your ledger, and you're back on going. And if somebody does get whacked out, probably gonna be Nick, we could say, we'll just take him offline, but the rest of us keep working until he gets his stuff fixed, and then he can catch back up on the ledger. So, pretty cool stuff. So what are the fundamental concepts, or what does it take to actually build a blockchain? First and foremost, it's about the ledger. I mean, it's a database at the end of the day, right? It's a distributed database, shared distributed ledger. Ledgers have been around since Aristotle created it in 1990, or 1494, and it was just, paper. I'm taking this and I'm giving it to you, and now you take that, put it down on your book, and we'll double check, make sure it's all good and we're kosher. So it's the same thing today. It's a ledger. We're making sure that we're tracking ownership and asset, key value pairs, to everything, right? Anything that's interesting on the blockchain. And we're just validating that constantly is moving. Smart contracts, business logic. Just think business logic. This is the intelligence behind what's driving these ledgers. So you can automate what is actually being done. Perfect example of what a smart contract can do. IBM implemented in their IGF system our own blockchain. So we ate our own dog food. Within 1 month, at any given time, we would have $100,000 of dispute, right? Just sitting, money just sitting in dispute. 100,000 or is it 100 million?
100 million.
Yeah, I think it's 100 million too. $100 million. Yeah, just sitting. Yeah, a couple of extra zeros. Just sitting in dispute, right? And that dispute is like, is this actually a valid contract agency that's giving me this, or this asset kind of thing? I mean, think about that. It's just sitting there. Nobody's using it. Nobody's getting interest off of it. It's just wasted money, just floating in space, basically, until it's resolved. And in 1 month after doing this and putting business logic in, we reduced that by 40%. I mean, it's amazing. And we're still working on it to continue to get those patterns and recognize and build that business logic around it so that it can do this fundamental work for us. Privacy and trust. So everybody thinks, well, not everybody. Bitcoin extremists and other folks think, well, privacy and trust, that doesn't relate to blockchains. That's not really true. I mean, even an anonymous factor on Bitcoin, you have some sort of privacy, right? I mean, it's why people double spoof their IP addresses and use fake routers to be able to do things at times. We go at it a different way. We create privacy and truth by 4 different levels of access control, starting from your membership, where we invite people. Like, if I want to invite you to my network, I have to get agreement from other people. And I define the policy. I could say everybody in the room needs to agree before I invite Elizabeth to the network. Or you can say majority, or I could say just a handful of people. It's all based on what you define as your policy and what that entire network of people will agree upon. So it's kind of going down a little far, but that's all endorsement policies, trusted network concept. And then we also have isolation with channels and things like that. So anybody that wants to talk about this stuff afterwards, feel free, but I think I'm getting close if I'm not past my time here. So let's move on a little bit. So why is it relevant? Well, I've talked about this, especially that security piece. And I love that security piece, that security notion of eliminating that single bottleneck. Whenever you think about blockchain, think about that. You always want to, regardless, if it's Bitcoin, Ethereum, BitTorrent, IBM's blockchain, Hyperledger's, any one of their 5 platforms. It's all about eliminating that single source or that bottleneck problem. You got to get away from that if you're going to be doing anything blockchain. And that right there defines what's a good use case. If you're coming into this and you're going to do something by yourself, don't use blockchain. There's no reason. It's not for you. Use a centralized database because you're going to be that authoritative factor that's going to be proliferating all of that information to every individual. You want to be in a sharing community and a group of people that want to have that transparency and sharing of data to do very interesting things. That's what blockchain's about. That's what makes a good use case. Let's go on to that. So I mentioned, think about all of the different types of sectors, all the public sectors and things that blockchain can actually impact. You think about healthcare, you think about identity. Identity to me is a fantastic space. I mean, most people don't know that IBM had a very large hand in Social Security, the actual creation of Social Security back in the 60s. Think about if we can redefine Social Security again with identity, using zero knowledge proof where you give me a little bit of information, you give me a little bit, you give me, but I don't need that whole scenario to build an identity, but I can prove it off of multiple entities by doing that kind of thing. That's powerful. We wouldn't have credit bureau breaches repeatedly like we've seen. You know, there's a lot of impacts that can happen here. You know, healthcare, sharing a record. I would love to have had my grandparents and my dad's health records and be able to share that along with my stuff to my kids so that they could see common trends, genealogy. I'd love to be able to give it to research folks that are here at ACU to figure out how you actually string this, you know, family history and the genes and the environmental factors. And I mean, just think about all of the different things. You see these studies of people in Italy that drink this certain wine, live to be 94 on average. I mean, how can we validate this stuff, and how can we actually increase those factors and those findings around bigger things? I mean, Nick and I could share, you know, specific data about where we live and how that impacts us. Just a lot of very cool things that you don't think about that could actually start to kind of, you know, collate together and bring interesting things. But with blockchain, first and foremost is supply chain. There is nothing better than supply chain in the way that it works. Actually, let me go ahead and flip down to our supply chain. This is the best use case ever. I mean, just having that transparency, food to fork, to be able to see what happened. Andy's about to show us some really cool demo on some of the stuff that he has done and why he's investigating blockchain with us, because it just screams perfectly why you would use blockchain. And as a matter of fact, the vice president of food quality for Walmart was in front of Congress last week with my boss, with the head of NIST, which is an ultra security standards board, and a couple other individuals. And he just described there was a contamination outbreak of peanut butter in 2016 that took them 7 days to go through and trace exactly what the bad lot was. And he reproduced that on the IBM blockchain platform in 2.2 seconds. They found exactly what the problem was. That's the kind of change the world stuff that we can do that is just mind-numbing to me, and it just gives me little chills. That sounds, I mean, I always hated computers, but this actually gives me little chills. I think this is phenomenal stuff. One other use case that I'll just touch on before giving this over to Andy, because I know I am over, so I apologize, is audit and compliance. Audit and compliance is a use case that not a lot of people actually think about when they think about blockchain, because they're always automatically thinking, all right, I'm going to give, I'm going to push data, I'm just going to keep pushing it. But if you create a node that can only pull information, can't affect the ledger at all, but it can read the ledger. Think about your CPAs, think about your FDA compliance audits and things like that. I know with IBM, we spend just boatloads of money. We have entire departments in every department that we have, which is, I think, I don't know, a trillion different departments that we have in IBM. But audit and compliance to gather these information docs to give to somebody at a certain time at all times. If you have a node that at any time it shares the specific data that somebody needs to actually audit and just complete their job, that's phenomenal. And it frees up all these other resources to figure out how we do things actually better and keep things more accurate. And it eliminates that $100 million of dispute stuff that's just floating out there. So it's not taking people's jobs away, it's actually putting people into the job that they have studied and practiced and they want to do. Versus paper pushing, they can do that investigation and get underneath and actually feel, at least in my opinion, feel like they're of more value into what they've been studying for 4, 6, in my case maybe 8 years of stuff. You know, it's just like, to me, it's just fantastic. So anyway, with that, I want to go ahead and turn this over to Andy, who's going to show an actual demo of what his company, Food Logic, is doing, and why this is along supply chain lines and why this is, I think, such a value add. So thanks. I'll be back in a minute or two just to close out a few things.